Welcome back. It's still Breakfast Extra here. Now, for millions of Nigerian students, the West Africa Senior School Certificate Examination is more than just an examination, but a gateway to university admission, employment, a gateway to opportunities, and for many, the first major test of their academic future. But the latest WAEC results are raising serious questions about what is happening inside Nigeria's classrooms. In the 2026 WAEC, 61.54% of candidates obtained credits in at least 5 subjects, including English, language, and mathematics, making 38.46%, which is almost 4 out of every 10 candidates failing to meet the benchmark. And when placed against previous figures, the concern becomes even more significant. In 2024, 72.12% of candidates met the 5-credit benchmark. In 2025, the figure stood at 62.96% after WAEC revised its initial result. Now, in 2026, 61.54% have met the benchmark, a small increase, or is it decrease now, in that percentage between them and others who might not have gotten that qualification.
But there's another layer to these numbers. The 2026 computer-based WAEC for private candidates recorded a 32.72% pass rate for the same 5-credit benchmark, including English and mathematics. And while that signifies an improvement from 26 to 96% in 2025 and 30.95% in 2024, it still means that fewer than 1 in 3 candidates met the benchmark in that category. So are we looking at a problem with the students, the teachers, the curriculum, the examination systems, or the entire education ecosystem? And joining us to examine the figures, the underlying problems, and what must change is Dr. Peter Ogudoro, education researcher and leader, Nigerian Teachers Community. Dr. Ogudoro, good morning, and thank you for joining.
Yeah.
I was practicing within me.
You have to stress exactly why we had to get it right, because we only just discovered it's actually not a Yoruba name, it's an Igbo name.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, but that's risky you're imposing on me. You know the way it works in Nigeria. Once associated with one tribe, everything you're saying, you know, can be interpreted with a different lens that is not, emphasizing what we're here for.
We've spoken many times, but each time I call you Ogudoro. I'm only just realizing Ogudoro. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ogudoro, thank you so much for coming. And I think now it's a very important conversation when we talk about education. I think my first question, what is the problem? I think that's the only way I can say it. Yeah. What is the problem with our education? Why are we declining so drastically?
Yeah, we have, generally speaking, square pegs in round holes at the policy level. So the people who are running the education system are interlopers in the system. They are, generally speaking, not professional educationists. And until you are able to get the people who know what education is about, that is not about acquisition of certificate, diploma, you won't be able to move Nigeria's education forward. Because first, you have to get a good philosophy of education. What are we actually in the school to do? Are we in the school just to acquire certificates or to develop the capacity to solve practical problems? We haven't been able to define that for ourselves. So the average Nigerian child goes to school just to go through motion, and at the end of the road, write WAEC, write jump, and get a certificate. And that's why, apart from the fact that we are not doing well, even in terms of the outcomes that parents send their children, to school for, we are also failing when it comes to meeting the expectations of employers, because most of the people coming out of our school system are not able to have the capacity to solve practical problems. And that's why those who are doing very important, businesses in Nigeria, including Dangote, they keep importing human capital from abroad because we are not delivering what education is supposed to deliver.
Right. You mentioned policy. Now, before we go to the teachers and the students and the environment where they learn, what policies are missing? I think Nigeria is how many years old? Was 60-something, close to burial. Forgive me, Lord. But, what are the policies that you feel like to implement it is not supposed to be rocket science that we're missing?
Well, a simple thing of getting the right people in one room to determine what we should be doing education for. We have never been able to do that. So we are building a house from the roof. It's not going to stand because the foundation isn't there. So that's the very first step we have to take as a people. Beyond that, we also have to ensure that we recognize the most critical element in the education system and give that element the recognition, the respect, the compensation it deserves to be able to drive the system. And there I'm talking about teachers. We haven't been able to appreciate the fact that you don't go to school just to look at shiny buildings, to look at furniture. You go to school to listen to people who will provide you the inspiration and who have the skills to help you acquire knowledge, skills and the right attitudes that will prepare you for the role you're going to play in the larger society. We haven't been able to take care of those things, and so we will continue to struggle until we're able to, even in Parliament, get people who understand education to populate education committees of both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Most of the time, we just put medical doctors, engineers in these places, and they go there and waste everybody's time. So we have been getting it wrong in almost every respect.
Doctor, I want us to take a look at the numbers definitively. Now, let's take a look at the pass mark for the past 3 years, 2026, 25, and 24. Let's start from 2024. Let's first of all note that 68% that got 5 credits doesn't necessarily mean that the rest 32 point something failed. It's not necessarily that they failed, but that they didn't get math and English.
Correct.
And 5 credits.
Yeah.
Now, to look at it more definitively, 2024, 5 credits, including English and math, that was 72.1%. 2025, it was 62.9%. 2026, it was 61.54%. So the gap between this year and last year isn't as much as the gap from 2024 to 2025. So would you say that we're doing something better now? Since we're closing that gap?
No, not necessarily. Effectively speaking, I think we're doing worse.
Oh.
Yeah, the reason, if we conduct valid exams, the result will be worse than what you're seeing.
Really?
Examination corruption, examination malpractice, it has become endemic, really. So the average Nigerian child is not actually dependent on what he knows to be able to write exams. And that's actually more pervasive in the private school system, because these private school operators, most of them are just business people who think that the way to keep bringing parents into their school is to ensure that they deliver the outcomes that parents are looking for. So they have a way of organizing the system to ensure that children finish with the 9 A's. It doesn't necessarily mean that those children can prove that they own those certificates at the end of the day. And that's why you see when we come to the point where children are trying to access universities insist that they have to conduct their own exams, which is what they call post-UTME, because they don't trust WAEC, they don't trust NECO, and they also do not trust JAM, because these 3 organizations have not been able to get to a point where they can conduct exams that provide valid results, that give you evidence that enables you to determine who is qualified to come and sit in a university classroom to benefit from higher education. So the result is worse than this, and there are factors, numerous factors that are responsible for this.
Now let's talk about those factors. First of all, I want to take away security from this, because security ought to be a big factor for 2026. There's students who are not going to school or who have missed classes, and that would affect the results. There's the economy to also consider. Students will miss classes because their parents can't afford schools. There's that. But then, we're always looking at it from the secondary school level. There are other levels to this, Queen, and I don't know if you've considered. What if a child can't read right because they had bad foundation in primary school, yet we're trumping all those on the CBT exams for WAEC at the end of the day?
Yeah.
What about the primary school level? Have we considered these as factors for why we might be failing?
You're already sounding like somebody who can actually, wear the shoe of the Minister of Education.
Pay me more.
You have a fair idea regarding where the problem is. So the foundation is weak for most Nigerian children. Their numeracy and literacy, we haven't done well there, because most of the people running our classrooms as teachers are not people who have cutting-edge skills to be able to function in those classrooms and give us the results we're looking for. Unfortunately for us, the few who are quite competent with respect to maths and English, which is the focus of even this analysis we're doing, most of the people teaching those subjects in our schools are people who actually didn't study mathematics. Most of them studied engineering, because we are not industrialized, so you find engineers not being able to get into industry, so they go to schools and teach mathematics. Now, they don't have the skills to run classrooms, because teaching is a profession. The same way you go to study medicine, people like us who went to school to study how to teach. So it's not everybody that can get into a classroom and teach. But today, you find lawyers teaching English language. You find mass communication, graduates teaching teaching literature. You find engineers teaching mathematics and physics. But in proper societies, if you don't study physics, you don't teach physics, okay? Now, the few who have studied maths, physics, chemistry, and biology are leaving Nigeria in droves because Britain is interested in them. Britain is giving £29,000 for people who studied physics to come to the United Kingdom and study for 1 year for free, and thereafter progress to earning salary that can be as high as £40,000 in a year. Multiply that by the current exchange rate, you see that the average Nigerian teacher who is good in physics, in mathematics, in chemistry and biology, there are people who are now able to truly become billionaires because, £40,000, when you translate it into, it's more than 70 million, okay? Nobody gets that here. So if you are competent in those subjects, you leave the country. So the people teaching most of the subjects are interlopers in the system. They are not professional teachers most of the time. And you can't wish away that and then be hoping that your children will finish, will get to the finish line and become experts.
Well, we've established here now that foundation is key. Like you said, we're building from the roof down, which is very impossible. Yeah. It's not going to make sense. Now, for the children now, would you say that the curriculum we were using a few years ago is still the same thing we're using now? Or would you say that the system, social media, has diverted the attention of these children? That is why their spam, to pay attention to studies is pretty hard.
Yeah, well, I hear this all the time, but those things are not evidence-based, especially in our context. The average Nigerian child doesn't even have a smartphone. The reason why people keep talking about social media is because you live in Lagos, and then your friends live in Port Harcourt and Abuja. So people always assume that all Nigerians live in Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Lagos. The average Nigerian child lives in rural communities, is from families where even putting food on the table this night is a very difficult thing. So they don't have access to broadband internet access. They don't have the smartphone. So that's not the issue. As a matter of fact, the children who have access to smartphones and who even have access to WhatsApp or whatever, social media, generally speaking, tend to even do better than those who don't have access to these things, because in a modern society, most of the things that your teacher, is paid to teach you are now available on the internet. So international schools require even children in primary school to bring their smartphones to the class. I run a program for young Africans who want to send abroad to go and get cutting-edge skills. If you don't have a smartphone as a teenager, you don't come into that class because you won't be able to function. Because we don't do all the teaching. We keep looking at teaching from the angle of the teacher is there, he's the expert, and so the students are like a bank account, you keep depositing in them. That's not where the world is. So the teacher is not doing more than about 50% of what goes on in the classroom. The students do most of the work themselves. So we talk about, splitting the classroom, hybrid arrangements. So the child is given assignment, he reads up what we're going to talk about today at home, just yesterday, and then he comes into the class ready to make useful contributions. And most of the time you discover that there are these children who have even been studying this since long before it became an issue that the class wants to grapple with. So the idea of always blaming, social media, we don't have evidence that supports it. That is not to say that you don't have children who have been distracted by this, because sometimes when you do this analysis, you say, but I see my child is always on social media. The reason why your child is always on social media is because your child is not attending a school where they have trained the child on how to become digitally fluent, how to, if a child who has purpose, who has clarity regarding why he's in school, why he is, and even in the world, is a child who, even without you reminding him, is going to, pick up his books and read at the right time. Right. I have two children. Both of them, I made sure they had access to computers. They had their own individual laptops even at the age of 6, and I gave them internet access, and I trained them to become, people who live life of purpose. Today, both of them are flourishing, internationally, and people Americans are looking for them, Canadians are looking for them, because one is a physicist, the other one is a management scientist.
That's a proud father.
They have had access to internet before they were 10. They became Microsoft certified. Most of the resources available to them, both of them have studied on the basis of scholarship. Combined, both of them have got scholarship worth about a billion naira. Interesting. If they didn't have digital skills, they wouldn't have been able to access that.
Now, Dr. Ogudoro, I need to go deep to pronounce it. We've talked about this, and what came to mind is, let's look at the leaders of today. If we continue like this, with this failure, with this decline, are we still going to have people who were learned in this country left, if teachers are leaving because there are, you know, better opportunities out there to teach, and then it feels like we're treating the education like it's just a surface, it's like a makeup situation. What is the damage Nigeria will face if we don't fix this education system like now?
We'll continue to retrogress. In a modern society, if you stand still, you're actually not standing still, you're going backwards, because the people in the same race with you are running at a very fast speed, especially in the age of the AI. You get what I mean? So things are going to get worse. Unemployment problem will compound, and we are talking about a country that, as we speak, is one of the countries in the world with the highest population growth rate. You already know that in just 24 years away, Nigeria will become the third largest, country in the world in terms of population. We'll hit up to 400 million people. We'll overtake America, overtake most other countries. We'll be number 3 after India and China. So in that kind of situation, what you find is that you are not going to be able to produce competent hands, capable hands who are able to compete globally and who are going to be able to have the skills you need to run industry and to even provoke new ideas, innovation, which is what is important now. Even when we talk about entrepreneurship, I hear these days they have tried to start entrepreneurship programs in universities. But who are the people teaching entrepreneurship programs in universities? They are regular lecturers who have never done any business. So they don't know how to run a business. They have never failed. They don't know what it takes to achieve a rebound. So we are getting it wrong, on all fronts, and the world is likely to continue to laugh at us, and our children will continue to look for what you call greener pastures, because this place is not going to be able to take care of them. So brain drain will remain a challenge. In the course of this week, I hear Lagos State has confirmed they are deficient in terms of numbers of medical doctors to the tune of 40,000 doctors. We need in Lagos. So other things being equal, we probably don't have more than about 2,000. And even those few who remain here are actively writing exams to be able to migrate out of the country. So we are in a dangerous place. If a client of mine is a psychiatrist, I got talking with her the other day, and she says they are not up to 300 that is serving the entire population of 250 million people. And it's in a country where virtually, as many as 50%, as much as 50% of Nigerians are living with mental health challenges. And you need psychiatrists to deal with that. And
we also had a death on that as well, because there's not enough. I think we read that in the daily.
Very good. Even this school system we are discussing, we need people like that to also intervene in the school system, because children are grappling with a lot. Their parents are not able to put a food on the table. And some of these children have become breadwinners, and so they have burdens on their shoulders. So rather than after school concentrate on preparing for the next day, they hit the streets and they're selling granola, they're selling different kinds of things.
I want to touch on something that you touched on. You talked about your kids having access to the internet and computers from when they were early. And then I know you've also been an advocate for accessibility when it comes to tertiary education for children, especially from the rural communities. And I have this opinion. I think that we are moving examinations online faster than we can digitize classrooms. And I mean this so because if we're pushing these exams to CBT, are we sure that there are kids who absolutely understand how to have these exams on computers? Did they have access? Are we not putting a bigger divide in between those who do have access, like your kids, and those who don't, those inside of maybe villages next to Akure or Idare? So I'm wondering how this affects the results now. Perhaps some of those kids who didn't get all credits didn't have early access to technology. What do you think?
Absolutely. I did mention earlier, I think it was who I was referring to when I said, you seem to be the person we have been looking for to go and occupy the seat of Minister of Education. You have a fair idea regarding what the challenges are. We live in a country, just as I have already mentioned, where most Nigerian children do not live in Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Lagos. But unfortunately for us, because the policymakers live in Abuja and sometimes in Lagos, they always make policies on the basis of what they see in Abuja and Lagos. The average Nigerian child doesn't have access to computers. The classrooms where they study, are not places that are computerized. So why are we insisting that when they want to go to university, for example, they have to, all the exams must be done, using computers. Now we are saying we must conduct all exams at the WAEC level using computers. Even when it comes to essays, we are thinking that we'll be able to deploy, a technology that will be able to extract what the children, know, and you can do that in a very valid way. The answer is that we are not correct even in doing that, because Britain is centuries ahead of us. As we speak, they still do pen and paper exams. Why are we running faster than the people who taught us? You get what I mean? If you go to Finland, they still do pen and paper exams.
The excuse is that it's much more secure. The excuse is that processing speed. The excuse is there's so many excuses and they're valid. You don't promote elimination of examination malpractice at the expense of equity, fairness, and justice. That's not fair. You can't train a child for 6 years in secondary school without him having seen a computer once. And then at the point you want him to prove to you what he knows, you tell him to tell you so in a language he does not understand. Computer is a language. It is. So if you have taught me in Yoruba, why are you asking me to reveal what I know to you in English language? And if you have taught me without computers, why are you asking me to reveal those things, in computers? But the argument of the people who conduct these exams is, you don't need to be very, sophisticated in terms of digital skills to be able, you only need to master A, B, C, D, and then, you need the cursors for go this way and go that way and go that way. That's not correct. You used phones. When you started, the very first month you started using phones, if you check, you were not as fast as you use your phone now. You can close your eyes now and still use your phone. So the more you use computer, the more you use your smartphone, the better you get at it. So our leaders are just using their own children who they have trained abroad, who attend international schools to determine what they want to do in the school system. And I think that's a very unfair thing to do. We're a society that doesn't really show interest in fairness, equity, and justice. That's why, again, if we want to move forward, if you give me the resources, I would take all the people in Senate, in House of Reps, and in the Ministry of Education, across all states and federal, I'll take them to Finland to go and see how a system works. I do research in Finland, and when I enter their classrooms, you will just weep for your country. I think you need to do that, sir. We're out of time, but I want you to answer in just a minute, if you can be very summary, what we should expect for next year's numbers when it comes to the credits, to math, English, and to others, and what the factors that will be determining these numbers will be for 2027.
No matter how we try, we can't be accurate in the prediction we are going to make. The reason is, you see, as they are trying to find ways to make examination malpractice go away, the people who make money from it are walking several steps ahead of you. So you might get to next year and the result improves, but that the outcome improves is not proof that your children's capacity to solve practical problems, has improved. So it depends on how fast those who make money from
that's very grim. It's very grim. I was hoping for hope.
We need to go back to the foundation. Put in Finland, you need a master's degree to stand in a primary school to teach, because they know that once you get it right at the foundation level, even if you leave the child after secondary school, the child can take care of himself. I have a PhD, I have 2 master's degrees, I have over 10 professional certifications. I have studied in several countries around the world. My parents didn't give me education beyond secondary school. Everything I have acquired, I've acquired on my own. So give the children a good foundation, which was what my parents did, and leave them alone. They will take care of themselves.
There you go.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Peter Ogudoro. It was an amazing conversation.
It was indeed.
It's eye-opener. For me, don't start building from the roof, build from the foundation.